Lauren's still here, and welcome back to High Intensity Business, your one-stop shop for growing your strength training business and fueling your passion for high intensity training. Today, we welcome back Skyler Tanner, owner of Smart Strength Austin. And for those of you who don't know Skyler, he's in my opinion, a health, fitness, and nutrition genius and one of my go-tos. Whenever I have any question about nutrition or fitness or training, health-related stuff, he's been a personal trainer for like 50 years or something.
Right.
27.
I mean, look at how young I look. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
50 years of training.
It's just a testament to the strength training.
That's right. That's right.
27 years to be exact, according to the website.
27 years.
27.
Yes.
Still very impressive. A speaker at conferences like REC, now Strength Forum, Ancestral Health Symposium, etc. Owner of Smart Strength Austin. Personal training facility providing efficient 30-minute evidence-based workouts delivered by educated expert professionals. And those are the 4 bullets I have. It's not even doing them justice. And excited to be back with you, Skyler, and doing our kind of like twice yearly random hour that we seem to be doing.
Right. And I like that. I like that cadence on this because, we obviously we communicate between those 2 points, but bigger themes tend to run through, and then it's better to not have blocks of text, but have more voluminous conversation around that.
Yes. I struggle with the text medium, to be honest. And you can be quite abstract sometimes. I'm like, I wish I could just call you and just be like,
who are you talking about?
Yeah. Then I'm like, man, Skyler must get so fed up with how dumb I am. So this is like frustrating for both of us.
No, look, my wife tells me it's a character flaw. I will say things expecting people to have context. And then I jump on that grenade and I monopolize the conversation. And I don't mean to do that, but so I'm aware of the tendency. And I think in the context of all of us, sort of casually, messaging with each other, I get comfortable and I just assume either A, you're going to be like, what the hell is Skyler talking about? No offense taken. Or B, it's going to be like a query that leads to discussion or laughs,
Yeah, absolutely. And just, I guess I just want to set the scene for people that might just be tuning in for the first time. If you're a new listener, I cannot overstate just how knowledgeable Skyler is about fitness, health, and nutrition, and now also growing the personal strength training business. So if you're just tuning in, I mean, I'm excited because we're going to talk about a lot about health and fitness. We're going to front load this podcast with that. We might not even get to much business stuff. But if you're someone who is like passionate about understanding, what the science is saying in terms of the best ways to maintain or restore great health and longevity and strength and fitness, etc., then I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation with Skyler. So Skyler, very, very sadly, obviously found out today from yourself that Art De Vany very recently passed away, who was a real hero in health and fitness, and more specifically, I guess, the paleo movement. I mean, it's so much more to it than that. He was obviously an extremely bright guy. Some great presentations online where he goes through the science of how strength training improves health, etc. And I just wanted to talk about that for a second because I know you knew him, you learned so much from him. Do you want to just speak on like how did you get connected and what's his influence been like on you over the years?
So I think, that sometimes memories blend together. My awareness of Art came from Clarence Bass, because Clarence Bass, who has not died, who is still alive and kicking, who is still sharp, who is, I think, 87, maybe he just turned 88. You can go to cbass.com and see where he's at. But he had an article about Art in which this is going to be like Art's 61 at this point, or no later than 65. So he's still in academia. There's a picture of him shirtless doing wind sprints with what at the time looked like the antiquated, like polarized unilens glasses that now all the Gen Alpha kids wear unironically, and all the Gen Z bros with their vapes in their mouth and their Tom Selleck mustaches also wear. and he's doing wind sprints, and his
Yeah.
hair's back, and he's looking extremely fit for a 60-something-year-old. And, so sort of Clarence, being Clarence, just weighs the arguments, and like any good lawyer, and he arrives at, like most Clarence is sort of, you got to make it work for you. Here are some similarities between what I do. Here's some differences, but maybe this rings true to you. And then I end up connecting through, to everybody else kind of through Art in that way, because he had a blog, and you'd see people who are commenting on the blog. And then that may have been how I found out about Rob Wolf, for example, that way. A lot of people kind of found out about Art through Rob Wolf, but I think I found about it backwards. And then push comes to shove, and one thing leads to the next, and next thing you know, I'm speaking at the Ancestor Health Symposium, the first one ever. And then later, he came to one of the Paleo FXs, 2018, 2017, somewhere in that range. And, he was messing around on one of the ARX equipment, and we met, we chatted, and met in person, because I was regularly commenting on his blog. And if you go to, my long neglected blog, I have some of Art's, like, he did this whole ramble on Zen, and it was, he says, I was once a philosophy major, but I got bored with it. Mm. And then he goes on to talk about, this idea of your moment of power is now. You have and Doug would talk about this as the OODA loop, which he got from this Navy pilot. And the idea is that if you live in the real world, you can't control any outcome. This is always my struggle with, like, forecasting. If you're a business, like, we're going to do this in this quarter, I'm like, the hell you are. I can't predict the end of my day, let alone the next 12 weeks. So instead of glumping on the outcomes, and this is kind of Art's point largely, is you have to want to glump onto the actions that lead to the outcomes. You have to be not somebody who wants an outcome. You have to be somebody who wants an action. And that's hard. We want to just try to wrestle reality to the outcome, but really you got to want to do the uncomfortable, unglamorous, day after day actions that constrain the path towards increasing the likelihood. Occasionally, you being a basketball fan, you appreciate this. Occasionally, you need some irrational confidence. You need to take some heat checks. You need to act as if you can control the outcome. But that's a mask you're putting on. That's an affect. You're playing from the front. What if this has already happened? How would I be acting? So most of your life is spent doing the actions that might lead to the outcome, making the extra marketing post, making the, double checking your systems to make sure that what you're intending to say during a intro call is actually what you mean to say. Making sure that you are setting a person up in the equipment properly so that getting to task failure or approaching task failure is more automatic versus like getting excited about the rah-rahing at the end of the set. Whatever it is, you have to want the action that might lead to the outcome or increases the likelihood of the outcome. So Art came to that from an economics background. He would say, most economists say this, like, humans are not rational, right? We have this idea of like rational self-interest in economics, but behavioral economics kind of puts that all to bear and says, yeah, but actually in the real world, none of that's true. People aren't making rational decisions, weighing things. They are, and StoryBrand talks about this a lot, even if they're not calling it this, is like, if you don't have a story, you have nothing to sell. But that story is intentionally non-rational. Like it is meant to evoke an emotion, of relationship, of understanding. When we do a sales call, we're not trying to manipulate people. We're just trying to put our thumbs on like pain and problems and helping people see where the outcome might lead if they keep doing the actions that they're doing. And as incredible godfathers of, hard rock and progressive rock, Rush once said, if you don't make a choice, you've still made a choice. If you do nothing, you've still made a choice. So we're kind of telling clients that in the action you're taking, doing nothing, is going to keep leading you down this path unless you make a change. And so humans, like for example, if you put vegetables at the start of the lunch line for kids, they eat more vegetables. The vegetables were always there. You just manipulated the environment. Somebody's always manipulating the environment. So let's try to manipulate the environment towards an outcome we want. I mean, that's when we tell stories. That's also kind of like tiny habits is doing that. It's like, hey, when I go to the bathroom, I'm going to do 10 push-ups. You know, you're syncing one habit.
You come up with tiny habits. That
was
James
BJ
Clear
Fogg.
thing?
BJ Fogg.
BJ Fogg. Oh,
no,
okay,
no. James Clear with Atomic Habits tried to like drag all this stuff together as a very interested individual. BJ Fogg is the academic at Stanford, whose lab for good and for ill, because all of the
addiction
kind
stuff,
of roulette addiction stuff comes out of that too. Well, it comes out of that, and it comes out of Vegas and the gambling industry,
which
they're the ones
kind of like social media and all of that stuff. Yeah,
correct.
Got it.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct. But in its most virtuous form, it's about like, if you're already doing things, how can we make the thing you want to do stick to something you're already doing? How can we stack those together and in a way that reminds you, and all the permutations of that. So that in a lot of ways is an extension of behavioral economics, which is if you can improve the likelihood of an outcome by creating an environment that facilitates the outcome.
I'd love to hear how you do that in your own life at the moment, if you do that at all. Trophy husband.
Sure. So for the past 2 years, I've got over a 2-year streak with learning Spanish, and that's not Duolingo. I have every day I listen 60 to 90 minutes of comprehensible input, which is just a level of Spanish that I can understand the vast majority of the content and the context. And then I do 15 to 20 minutes of flashcards, which I've built over time. I started with a deck that was not built by myself, but then I've been building my own deck, and I've got 1,700 cards, nearly 1,800 cards in that. And the goal is to eventually build that up to 5,000 cards. And I read for 10 minutes at night before bed. And
read Spanish.
This year I've graded reader. So there's an international scale of fluency. They'd say A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. Conversational fluency is considered B2. As a second language learner, you're going to still make mistakes. Your structure may be slightly derived from your own, from your mother tongue. And that's okay, because those will correct in time, because you can talk around the things you don't know. You can communicate at speed. Somebody doesn't need to be talking at you very slowly. And then to get into the highest level, C1, C2, that's like your teacher at university who is from another country. You know, like they have deep content knowledge in a single area. And even for us to hit C2, we would actually have to study for it. You know, the level of understanding words, phrases, colloquialisms, etc., far exceeds how we speak on a day-to-day basis. Right?
Yeah, right.
Right? I mean, right. But think about it the other way. Man, I speak amazing Spanish. I don't understand any of it. You know, like it doesn't work that way. Instead, it's I understand a lot of this other language. I struggle to generate it myself to that degree, even with English. Like when you read prose and you hear scientific papers and you've heard it and you understand every word. Now reproduce that with your own speech. You would struggle to generate it in that way. And sometimes writing is helpful because it slows you down and you can use more exacting words. But in conversation, we are trying to communicate and connect. We are not trying to teach to the level of granularity that a paper might require or a class might require. So in my life, how I've done that is that when I wake up in the morning and I'm unloading the dishwasher and I'm making the kids breakfast and I'm making the coffee for myself and for Sarah and getting ready to come to the gym in the morning, I am listening to comprehensible input in Espanol. So I have a bunch of podcasts.
Why Spanish?
I do that with. Well, I'm in the American Southwest.
Right. So there's a lot of Spanish population, is there? Spanish.
Central Texas has a lot of Mexicans and from the states in northern
Yeah,
Mexico, like
yeah,
Nuevo Leon and Chihuahua and places like that. San Antonio, which is about an hour, 70 minutes south of here, is jokingly called, like the northern province of Mexico, because it and El Paso, as larger cities in Texas, are extremely Mexican influenced. Uh, and they're not on the border. Like, there are a lot of border towns, Laredo and places like that, people are just going back and forth across the border, and that's fine. They're going through legal crossings, but it's just that my point is that in those areas, Mexico and the United States are basically one
yeah.
autonomous community.
It's obvious to me
So
now.
we have a lot of that here. And then I grew up in Arizona. So same thing. You had a lot of Spanish influence there. Um, in my heart of hearts, I am of the American Southwest. So for me, and I think about, languages, obviously you're going to have Mandarin just because of the size of China is maybe the most spoken. Although I'm not sure that's actually true on a numbers basis, but it's like English and Spanish, and you're able to talk to a huge number of people in the world. And I can make arguments for, hey, is this helping my brain or whatever? The twofold reasons. Number one is just to prove to myself I could learn a language, because I tried to sleep through German in high school, and that didn't go so well. I was operating under the idea that English is a Germanic language. I could just sleep through it and I would get it, just be osmosis. And I was a smart kid. Didn't work out so well. Turns out later, as I learned, if they taught Dutch, I might be able to do that, because Dutch seems like a fake language, and you can find all sorts of memes about that. It's a real language, but it seems like somebody speaking goofy English or funny English.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a meme on the internet. It's like, where is the gay bar? And it's like, bye is the homo bar. It's like, it's like, okay,
I
it
get
can't
it.
be real. This is like a Muppet, but it's real, and it's more complicated than that. But
Yeah.
that's also a Germanic language, right? So we're cousins. That's why it seems like English spoken funny, and they would say, English is Dutch spoken funny too. So it works both ways. So yeah, for me, that's what it is. I like I'm of the Southwest. Culturally, I am familiar with it. Yeah, and I think too, for me, Sarah spent a lot of time learning Spanish. She would never speak to me in Spanish, even though she's very good at speaking Spanish. She'd say, "I'm not a native speaker. I don't want to mess things up for you." But when I first went out of North America, I flew to Ecuador and visited Sarah there when she was there for a year in 2007 with World Teach. So Spanish in my life has connected to a lot of interesting events, and
Yeah. Makes sense.
so that for me is kind of it. I'm going to be able to use Spanish a lot. I to the extent that I don't need to use it in my day-to-day life, but it's not hard for me to put myself in situations where I'm using Spanish.
Yeah, very cool. Thanks for sharing that. So getting back to no, I love learning about those tiny things like tiny habits. Like, how can we kind of do little hacks during the day to, get us closer to our goals,
Yeah,
or just have the quality of
yeah,
life we want, right? Um,
yeah.
so getting back to Art De Vany, yeah, no, I've always really enjoyed listening to him on podcasts or reading his stuff, or I think it was probably Dr. Doug McGuff that told me about him and would quote him or mention him maybe on one of Doug's old blogs or something.
Sure.
And I read one of Art De Vany's books. I think it was like a paleo diet book, but really
Yeah,
interesting.
it was called the New Evolutionary Diet.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah, 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 that was good. Although I remember just writing down so many things, because obviously he wrote that quite some time ago, and there were quite a lot of issues that I had with it, and I remember writing them all down and never actually bringing them to you guys to discuss. Maybe I just got distracted
Yeah,
or whatever, run out of time.
sure.
But tell me more about specifically from a health and fitness or nutrition perspective, he's influenced you.
So Art early, one of the challenges with the health and fitness space is just that it's easy for, especially online, where people go to get their information, to have the whatever du jour in your face all the time. So Art has long maintained what he'd say is the lean, fast twitch phenotype. He's like, look, for all the endurance capacity in the world, you the things that fail you are fast twitch fibers, your ability to catch your balance, your ability to move quickly. And if those are maintained, you get a lot of the aerobic, the sprint interval training research supports this. You don't get all of the aerobic adaptations, but from a health outcome perspective, moving from the bottom of the VO2 max curve to the middle is where the majority of the health outcomes come or can be found. And then moving from the middle to the highest point does provide improvement. But this is where like the Peter Attia is like, I'm interested in the 80% that produces the final 20%. And then it comes with mechanical costs and it comes with time costs and it has a lot of other things. So Art's point writ large was if you are stronger and you maintain your fast twitch muscle fibers, then you will spontaneously from the bottom up move more in such a way that gives you many of the benefits of more sustained aerobic work.
So he was the one that started saying that first. Yeah.
He was coming at it from an evolutionary perspective, but Stu Phillips has written about this. This is the most unsung benefit of strength training. And it's one that I endlessly espouse this to clients because it's true, but also it flips the model. So if I'm ACSM certified this year, I'm going to get my clinical exercise physiologist certification, as we're talking about yesterday in the business call. It's the Ziggurat effect. It's like, it keeps on itching at me. It's like, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I gotta finish this. Part for differentiation, but mostly for me. I just want it, right? If you look at what the ACSM would say, they'd say, hey, 150 minutes of moderate to 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intense physical activity per week. And I always like to put a pin in that and say, what does moderate intensity mean? And people think it's like steady state on a treadmill. It's like, if you look at their MET values, metabolic equivalents, like a 20-minute per mile walk, right? And for some people that is a hoof, but for most people that is an intentional saunter. That is not, you are not struggling to keep up with that as a walk. 75 minutes is more like a 15-minute per mile walk, which is very intentional. If I put myself on a treadmill at 4 miles per hour, I'm going to be able to do it. I'm such long-legged, but I can't. You have to maintain some degree of attention to that pace.
Right.
So that's vigorous. They would say, you got to do moderate or vigorous, 75 minutes of vigorous, 150 minutes of moderate. Strength train twice a week, and then stretching and toning or whatever, nonsense that is, and not nonsense for nonsense, but I'll explain why I continue to be amazed that it still gets recommended as a blanket recommendation. I'm saying if you flip it, and this is what it supports, if you take your epidemiologically, your average American, and probably more, having been in London recently, probably like most individuals, if you're in a city, you're taking more steps. If you're outside of the city, you're taking less steps. It's just the way it works. Your average American takes somewhere between 4,000 to 5,000 steps per day, maybe 5,500 steps per day. Hold that thought. So if you train somebody, they start lifting weights, and they're not a 20-year-old, they're a postpartum woman all the way up to a 90-year-old. What happens is that between month 3 and month 9 of that habit, they start becoming more active spontaneously. They take on what Doug has sometimes called the active phenotype, and they will trade 20 to 25 minutes of sedentary time for light physical activity, for steps. So now, and that amount of steps, depending, terms and conditions applied, the length of the limb and all of that, moves people from 4,000 to 5,000 steps per day to the 7,000 to 8,000 step per day range. It approaches that.
Yeah.
So now you are moving up to the middle of the curve in which the steps per day benefits, reductions in all-cause mortality, improvements in, relative risk ratio of any disease, or most diseases, because pancreatic cancer is a son of a bitch. It levels off. Like going from 8 to 12,000, you're slicing the ham very thin after that. So if you strength train people and you give them no directive to walk more. And strength training, by definition, prioritizes the development of fast twitch muscle fibers. They are the fibers that do not get used in activities of daily living, the intermediate to the fast twitch fibers. And you're in our facility, you're going to be approaching that level of effort. Those are the fibers you're stimulating. You will spontaneously start moving more up to a point that approaches what the population health experts would suggest is a great target to hit on daily steps to just get in the bargain of your life the improvements in these health outcomes that you're seeking. We did that without prescribing it, without saying you need to walk more. As somebody develops more strength, they develop more confidence, they can do things longer because it feels better to do them longer. And so they don't leave the gym and feel like I have to check another box, or if I don't do this thing outside of the facility, then that, as if that's the active ingredient. The workout, the strength training is only made valuable by doing this other thing because I was told to do this other thing. So if we start from a foundation of strength and we stimulate those adaptations, people will organically move more to a level that approaches the simplest longevity formula possible. Lift weights twice a week, once or twice a week. Just for this adaptation, not maximum hypertrophy, for just this adaptation, it's progressive overload. It's always progressive overload. But either way, you get people strong enough that they just get out of their own way and start moving more. They hit the step count, they're stronger, and lo and behold, they're living longer. They're living up to a highly functional age, expected maximum in their whatever country they're in. Terms and conditions apply.
It's a... Before we go any further, I just want to quickly thank our sponsor, Barvik GmbH. Building a successful strength training business requires top quality exercise machines and a reliable source of spare parts. Sourcing Medix machines, known for their exceptional design and performance, can be challenging, often leaving you dependent on the secondary market. Barvik GmbH, based in Hamburg, Germany, offers a solution. Led by Egger Barvik, who spent over 40 years working with and learning about Nautilus and Medix machines, and also completed a 3.5-year apprenticeship at Mercedes, mastering quality engineering, Barvik produces German-engineered Medix machines in India with thoughtful enhancements over their US counterparts. Barvik machines are trusted by happy customers all over the world, including members of the high-intensity business community. They're even being supplied in large volumes to major fitness brands like Keiser Training. For example, my former business partner and current HIB member Sean purchased Medix equipment from Barvik for his studio here in Galway, Ireland, and both he and his clients couldn't be happier. From popular pieces like the leg press, pullover, and bicep curl to rarer gems like the super forearm and tibialis, Barvik offers a wide selection of 35 Medix models built higher for easy movement with a pallet jack, zinc-plated weight plates, flat steel core belts instead of carbon fiber, and adjustable 90mm rubber feet. And right now, you can get 5% off a minimum order of 6 machines. Visit medx.eu, tell the team what you need, and choose the machines to grow your business. That's medx.eu, medx.eu. And now, back to the episode. It's amazing to hear, actually, how that's still such an unknown thing. The whole, active phenotype, or, you becoming more spontaneously more active as you strength train is still something that you don't ever see being talked about in the mainstream. Really, I've never seen it. But yeah, it's interesting whenever you talk to professionals in our space, it's like, oh, hey, do you notice that your clients just become more active? And they all say yes, from that.
Yeah.
It's like the lead domino.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the lead domino. And that is, it's not instant, and we kind of live in this space. Well, I mean, some of the smaller facilities. So you've got like big box gyms, you got some studios, but even with the studio space, like the Barry's boot camps of the world, those are fitness farms. Let's herd the cattle in. Let's feed them their fitness. Let's feed them their fitness slot for the day. Let's herd the cattle out. Let's have no clear progression plan. And that is often a challenge of scale. As a business grows, we talked about this, and I think that we can tie this together. One of the things that we can get, if anybody's read E-Myth or any of these sort of business books, they'll be like processes, processes, processes. But processes, if you can give the same recipe to a home cook and you can give it to a trained chef, the same stepwise path, and the level of discernment changes the outcome from those same directives, right? Right? Experience, expertise, these things can't scale, or they scale, but it's a slower process. If you're going to find good people and build discernment, you can't speed run discernment. It just takes repetitions. It takes experience. And that's why, like, a good therapist, a good physical therapist is not here in America. I know NHS is different and different countries are different, but like when you go to a doc in a box here, like these, they're not emergency rooms. They are private. They call them urgent care. They are commercial, they're like medical concepts, which is such a weird idea to string out. Like it's a product. It's, hey, you want something more than primary care, but you don't want to go to the ER. It's urgent care. Okay. But it costs an arm and a leg. And court reform in the United States, where if you don't meet this standard with what you are expected to suggest, your A or your B grade intervention, your ass is on the line, right? Your medical license is at risk. So this is how you get women with osteoporosis being told they must take bisphosphonates, right? They absolutely must take these drugs that lay down poor quality bone for 5 years and moves the needle on a DEXA scan. But then after 5 years, their risk of atypical fracture goes up, and then they have to switch medications. Like now you've got this path of progress. Whereas things like, for example, estrogen therapy doesn't change bone mineral density, but it reduces fracture risk. Taking a woman's habitual diet and increasing the protein content up to 50% above their habitual baseline reduces fracture risk by 15%. Because bones are made of collagen and that's protein, but the DEXA doesn't see that because it's not a mineral, right? So you can increase quality and reduce fracture risk. If your muscles are stronger and your tendons are stronger and your bone mineral density doesn't change, you stabilize the loss rate. Well, now you're a lower fracture risk because you have more lean tissue to absorb impact should you fall. None of those things show up on DEXA. And then, so now you have a standard that is drawn in the sand based on insurance and legal risk. And it's based in reality, but it's a physician going to struggle with making a discerned choice or presenting this optionality, either A, because they just are snowed by everything they have to do and they don't know about it, or B, it's just easier knowing most people to just get them on the drug, right? Because most people don't do this stuff. Less than 20% of North Americans lift weights. Yeah. I have a study, one of my favorite ones, Zawidal. It followed 500,000 people in America for 8.75 years. And it was like 4.5% of those individuals lifted weights twice a week. 4.5%. Okay. You tell somebody this and like, well, why go to the gym and it's full? I'm like, yeah, that's where they are. Like, sick people are at the hospital, the people who already lift are at the gym. But that's only, 4.5 to 20% of the North American population. And epidemiology is a dating profile. People are presenting their best, most aspirational self when they do these surveys. This is what we're told in graduate school. Like, there's a fudge factor. People are like, I walked to the mailbox, I did cardio. It's like, that's not what we're talking about here, but people will present their best self. It's the Instagram highlight reel. So I always take that number and I round it down and I tell clients as much. Like, it's not you. This stuff is hard. Most people aren't going to value it. I'm the weird one who's going to do this anyway because I like keeping close contact with doing hard work and doing hard things. It makes me feel alive. I know that's not what everybody feels. And so we are always trying to present our options, our solutions, our workouts in the context of doing all this other stuff you'd rather be doing because you already value them. And that's how you're going to sort of live your best life.
Tell us about your training
Which
right
to
now.
me sometimes, yeah. So we're all now Petrella
Sorry to cut you
acolytes because he's so thick. So a few years back, it's been funny. The past 2 years has been like a return deep dive to some of the underlying physiology and some of the stuff that when we came in the HIIT, it was pretty straightforward, like go until your teeth fall out, right? And then you had people who were like, oh, obviously going hard is good, going even harder is better. And I think we can go back to our talks in like 2015 and 2016, where I was like, hey, this stuff is, hard on recovery if that's how you train. I think it's our second podcast ever, the problems with HIIT. And
Good memory.
that is true. That you can link it in the show notes. But the past 10 years have been very interesting in what was either intuited correctly or incorrectly by forebears. And so going to task failure gets you all the effective repetitions. What we couldn't say up until the past 10 years was when that started. Like, when are the effective repetitions? When did they begin? And over the past, some number of years, people like Borge Fazeli and Chris Beardsley has talked about this idea of effective reps or stimulating reps. And we had to sort of tease that out from EMG studies and observational data. And over the past couple of years, have been a lot of really cool studies where people actually volume match this stuff to some degree, where they say, hey, we're gonna, last year was good. Within subject design, one leg is doing heavy leg extensions, 3 to 5 rep max. The other is doing 20 to 25 rep max. So if there's a volume component of just the number of repetitions you're doing, they did the same number of sets, by the way. Then we should see different growth between the limbs within the same person. And these are great for hypertrophy studies. They're terrible for like strength or coordination studies, because if you do something with one leg, you ingrain a movement pattern that is transferable to the other leg.
Isn't there also problems of like cross education in strength training?
That's the problem with sports stuff. Like, you couldn't use like single leg sprint interval training and then test and retest the other leg, because the coordination pattern of sprinting hard, which is a coordination, is on a bike, would better there would be some transferability to the untrained limb. But for hypertrophy, for strength training, this variability, we can do that. We can do these within subject designs. It's really cool. And what you find is that the growth within the same person between the limbs is identical, right?
Right.
And actually, what that tells us is very interesting, because it's not, we sort of shorthand and say, oh, it's the last 5 reps. But if you've got a limb that's doing 3 to 5 reps to failure, and you've got a limb that's doing 20 to 25 reps to failure, then there are going to be many instances in the heavy limb that you're only getting 4 reps, you're only getting 3 reps. So maybe it's actually only the last 4 repetitions to task failure,
right?
Not in the last 5, right? Because there are conditions in which that heavy limb group is not making 5 repetitions, but they're producing the same growth as the group that did 20 to 25, who are absolutely going to get the last 5 repetitions because they're doing 20 to failure or 25 to failure. So does that mean we all go really, really heavy? No, it just means that we need to be in contact with that high level of effort. So, and even though in theory, when you look at muscle protein synthesis rates, and when they rise and when they fall, you'd say, oh, you should be able to train every 48 hours. Jeremy Lowenecki did a paper in like 2017 about this. It never seems to work out in practice. It never seems to work out that individuals doing a higher frequency, like trying to train a muscle 3 times a week at single set volume, produce better outcomes than do people training twice a week, or even people on like a Dorian type growth split, volume equated.
Yeah.
And some of that comes out of other literature that I like to cite internally with our team, where regardless of what the muscle protein synthesis rates say, we want the new baseline. We want the performance improvement, right? If progressive overload, we're looking back in 6 months and going, hey, you know what? You're moving 10% more weight. Is the goal, is the intent. You're trying to lay down functional contractile proteins. The only way you're going to need to lay down more is to continue to push what you can move. Initially, your body's going to make it cheaper. And I want to talk, I'm going to pin this now, but I want to talk about it later when we talk about business systems. For me, this year, the idea of making things cheaper, if we have time, I know, right? 22 minutes. We're trying to make things cheaper. The idea of cheapening things rather than trying to push the boundaries. Coming back to it. So your nervous system will initially try to make things cheaper by, hey, if I had to recruit everything to move 100 pounds and I strengthen all of these fibers that were involved, then it is cheaper to create the same force output next time. I don't have to recruit as many fibers. From a nervous system perspective, that is less expensive. Mm-hmm. It's a less expensive lift, which is why eventually you need to start adding more weight. I mean, that's the whole nature of the game. So getting close to task failure within repetition ranges that are motivating to train in. What works for the physiology doesn't work for the person, which is why most of our clients tend to work in the 8 to 12 repetition range. I have one client who feels like a failure if she does anything less than 20. She is an intensity 3 in our vernacular, where I have to be a kind of a speed bump. I'm going to give her advanced overload techniques on muscle groups she likes feeling work, not because they're more effective, but because she finds that satisfying. And it keeps her doing the other things that are also important.
Can I just make a point here? This is one of those examples where I think in some cases we might be, this is where dogmatism in strength training can really harm you, right? Because it's like, well, actually, if this client has this requirement in order to enjoy the training and adhere to the training long term, which just doesn't get addressed enough, I think, in like hit circles. It's like, well, then that's going to be a real problem. You're going to churn that client. So if it all works and we can do a lot of things safely, why not? Just wanted to make that point.
Yeah. So effort is required. Suffering is optional. And for some people, suffering is like a heavy weight, and others, suffering is the metabolic pump and discomfort. And there are trade-offs. Like this client knows she's just not going to be able to do as many exercises doing more repetitions. And she's fine with that, right? So we just have a very adult conversation about this and hold that line. So your original question is, what is my training? Now, in a given week, I train a variation of this Petrella routine, which Mike Petrella is so kind with his experience, and he's like a quiet Yoda up in his massive, beautiful space, right? And then you get talking to him and he's really animated. And he's got lots of great stories. But Blair had told me, he was just like, reached out to Petrella one time and said, hey, I want you to program for me. Can you do me a solid? I don't want to think about this. And Petrella gave him, he said, over the past few years, I've been looking back at my programming and seeing what actually really worked for me. And then comparing that, now I have an in-body, and he got up to like 230 something pounds. He's 6'4". That's a great thing. Is like, he's basically a linebacker. Like hockey players are basically American football linebackers. Fundamentally, they're about the same size. They're tall, they're thick, they hit people. And so he said, here's what worked for me, a variation of a Dorian routine. So when you go back and look at Dorian's training and you count the number of sets he's doing, he's splitting it over 4 workouts. Petrella drugged that down to 3 workouts. So he was having Blair do like chest and arms on, Monday, 3 sets of each approximately, and then adding some grip work on that day. Not 3 sets of exercises, 3 exercises. So 3 total sets. And then Wednesday, or 2 days later, 3 days later, it was legs and neck. And then 2 days after that, it was shoulders and back. So there's some overlap. We'd say you're directly training these muscles once a week. And that got him up to 230 pounds and like thick as a brick. So thicker than zoo glass. Yeah, we remember that? Which is,
that's what your favorite saying
for everybody now. Like let's make you thicker than zoo glass. So then I reached out to him. I was like, hey, here's my situation and tell me more about your thinking. And we just talked. So my routine for the past, 3 months, and it's not changing because it's cheap for me to do this mentally, is I'll do chest and arms on Monday or Sunday, depending, either at the YMCA if it's Sunday because it's right next to my house and I sauna afterwards, or in my facility on Monday, which would be Med-X chest press, single arm curl, Um, dumbbell chest press, double arm, bicep curl, pec fly, preacher curl on the Med-X bench of the leg extension, single arm tricep press down, ring finger rolls for the flexor group of my hands. I have this old weird wrist extensor like piece. It looks like a longhorn. It's crazy. I don't know who made it. I got it 20 years ago, maybe at a fishing exercise, but it makes like flexion and like medial lateral movements in the wrist really easy. Cool. So I do that. One set of each in the 4 to 6 rep range. Go heavy right from the start. There's really no warm up. 2 days later, I do, and I'm doing about a 3-3 cadence. And the 3-3 cadence is important because when you look at the literature in rehab, there's something called heavy slow contractions. And in individuals with tendonitis, starting in a moderate repetition range and progressing down to this heavier range results in severe reductions in pain. And the Germans, of course, the Germans did this. They have done biopsy studies of the actual tendon, which is not easy to do. And so when people have tendonitis, the tendrils, the actual fibers of the tendon are big, they're inflamed, they're pissed off. But after this training intervention, and this has been repeated multiple times, the tendrils are more tightly packed, they're denser, there is more integrity there. And then Drew Bay made a video recently in which he looked at the force spikes with this interesting PT tool for everything from 1-1 cadence out to like 30-30 or something crazy like that. And the difference in peaks between 3-3 and 10-10, I mean, it's like 2 pounds. It's not a lot. We're not so fragile as to be worried about that amount. And this is important because tendons don't like jerk, which is the change in the rate of acceleration. It's the next order derivative. So that's where you're going to cause some sort of injuries through the turnarounds if it's really spiky force profile, rapid change in acceleration. So at about a 3-3 cadence, you are extremely safe. And again, if it's working in injured individuals with actual really interesting.
Yeah.
Then you don't need to go. You can go slower if you like that. And certainly some exercises use a longer stroke. But I'm targeting that. I'm targeting 3-3, and we are targeting 3-3 with clients.
Why are you doing it for 3-3? What is it, to keep the workout briefer, or what is the?
No. 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down because of all the safety stuff I just talked about. So we can bake in safety.
Yeah.
We don't need to move super slow. That's just a cadence I'm targeting because it'll. And remember, these individuals were going like 6 rep max also in these studies with tendonitis. The tendon's like consistent strain, they don't like random jerking. So it's safe. It's stimulating the musculotendinous unit really nicely. And it's heavy enough that I'm reaching task failure or, finishing the line, beating what John Christie would say, beating failure. I'm
so you're looking at it's 4 to 6 reps, you said, right?
4 to 6 reps.
So it's like,
per exercise.
That could be like what, 36 seconds at the long
maybe
end?
24
maybe
to
40
seconds.
Like total time on the load.
Time on the load for that exercise.
You are convinced that's enough time on the load to stimulate change?
Well, going back to what we were talking about earlier, 3 to 5 reps versus 20 to 25 reps, that's a wildly variable time under loads.
That's a
but
good
they
point.
produce the same hypertrophy with in the individual. So time under load just becomes a tool. If somebody has joints that are that don't like heavy loading, mine are fine with it. I have no problems with it. Then go lighter, right?
Right.
And I will sometimes with clients, I'll use time under load in novel ways, depending. Where, like, for example, as we approach task failure, and I know they're going to get to the top of the repetition range, I'm saying, hey, look, how slow can you make these last 2 repetitions and still finish? I like to use advanced overload techniques and some of these time under load tools, not as a stimulus, because I am no longer convinced they are uniquely stimulating out of the initial super slow phase that I take everybody through. But they are tools to check the level of ownership of that repetition range before a weight increase, right? Because you've had it where you have one workout and you just like scream into that last repetition. It's all you could do to finish it. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't a controlled effort, and the next workout, you get 1 rep less at the same weight. You know what I mean? Like, before I'm adding weight, I want to see ownership of the range. And advanced overload techniques and these other tools offer an insight into how much adaptation has occurred. Did a client just had a good day last time, or are they ready for more? But in my own workouts, it's pretty straightforward. I'm just doing controlled reps, 2 or 1 rep short of task failure, depending on how I'm feeling on that day. Legs.
Yeah.
I mean, legs, I have like 15 exercises. Like, it's extremely comprehensive. And it's, it starts with leg extension, leg curl, both single leg variations, single leg calf. Then we go into a single leg, 45-degree hyperextension on the glute builder, single leg press on the leg press. Then we do single leg calf on a standing block. Then we go into double leg press. Once I get a MedX, it'll be the MedX. But right now I do kind of a sort of a duck foot, more adductor focused version on the leg press. And then depending on the week, I sometimes alternate. I do gluteator one week. I do inner thigh the other week. I do hip flexion one week. I do tibia the other week. I do seated calf both weeks. I do internal rotation of the hip on the week that I don't do the inner thigh. I've been adding hip listing, which is loaded movements of the pelvis that target the glute minimus, because why not? I'm here. Like, I have a silly long-term goal of doing loaded hip lifts with holding 100 pounds for 5 repetitions, controlled. So that like the top of my butt just sticks out enormously. And then I will do Carol sprints after that. And I do that. So that took me this morning. Both of those together took me, how long did that take? That took me 29 and a half minutes to do both of those.
It's so funny.
So the order, like,
yeah.
Oh, and I did neck too. Neck today as well. Neck on my leg.
Okay.
Day. So,
is that the whole workout? Because let's just put the whole workout down before I say anything.
That's the whole workout.
It's just funny because I'm like doing the total opposite of this right now. As you know, I'm doing like 3 to 5 exercises once a week, and that's it. And it's like really hard because I'm like, get me back in the gym. But like,
there's a place for that. I mean, unfortunately, the problem with writing a book is that you release the book. Like, you're not done with
crystallized.
It.
Yeah. Well,
it crystallized, and so
here's the thing.
There's a place for it, though.
Let me ask you this, because I'm in this phase of my life now where, kids a little bit older. I am, things are a little easier, although we had terrible sleep the last 2 nights. So it's actually, I find worse when you have like really great sleep for ages and suddenly the wheels fall off for a couple of days and you're just not used to it. My God. Anyway, that aside, so I was going through a part of my life, and you probably saw it happening in real time, Skyler, where I was like, all these optimization guys can get the hell away from me. Like, I'm not listening to Andrew Huberman. I'm not any of this stuff, because it's like,
right.
When you have young children, it's like barely feasible, right?
Right.
And depending on your circumstances. But now I'm like, okay, let's not let the passion fade. Let's get into this. Let's get learning more again. Let's start experimenting to kind of like, rekindle that passion. That's what I've been doing. And I've been strength training the whole way through. I've just tried to be more creative with it now. So I'm in this place where I'm doing like 90-day DEXA scans, 90 days apart, to see the impact of various protocols. And I think I'm going to go from like one extreme to the other. So I think I've got a DEXA like early February. And after that, I think I'm going to go straight into the Mike Petrella, we're calling it, right?
That's right. We're all Petrella acolytes now.
And just one more thing.
Dorian for natties.
I'll just make a quick plug here. Mike is going to share the entire protocol in detail on the in the community, in the free high intensity business community on School. And he's promised me he'll do that. I've got to follow up. So now it's like super accountability, right? Because I'm putting on the podcast. So if you're interested in reading the whole protocol, how he's doing it, which is slightly different to the way Skyler's doing it, and obviously you can make this change it around to work for you, right? Just go and join the free community. It's completely free. You also get a great community there, courses, loads of resources to help you with your strength training and your strength training business if you're into that. And that's over at school.com/HIB-free. There'll be a link below. Go on, Skyler. You're going to say.
So also his repetition range is 6 to 10. Because he said like it's heavy enough to get the task failure, but light enough that he felt like
he has less exercises than you, it sounds like.
The way he laid it out for Blair, like my legs are I do more for my legs.
Blair's doing this as well, is he?
Blair was. I don't know if he still is because it seems like Blair has been continuously sick and he just had his third
Yeah.
kid. So, although the gym's down in the basement, so then Friday I'll
Doesn't matter.
do, or tomorrow. So Thursday or Friday I'll do shoulders and back. So single arm Med-X torso arm, overhead press, single arm row, Med-X lateral raise, pull over, cable lateral raise, one arm dumbbell row, rear deltoid shrug, lumbar extension, shoulder horn, and internal rotation. And that's what I do for the third work. Again, I ripped through that in like 17 minutes.
And what's your, this is more volume than you're used to doing previously.
It is.
What's the goals for you? Because like, are you seriously thinking you're going to add like growth from this?
Well, let me step back and say, Petrella added growth and he did advanced training. Right. So, and here's the other thing coming back to cheap. I'm messing around getting my phone charging again here. Coming back to the idea of cheap, which is, you might all of a sudden, now I'm in a Zoom. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep going.
Okay. It's changed to, it suddenly, I turned on my car to charge my phone and now it's like, oh, hey, you are now on the audio for the car.
All good.
So, okay, good. So what we would do with that is I wanted a routine that I don't have to think about. And so having somebody else say, hey, just do this. And when it feels like progress. Great. Oh, and then on Saturday, I'll typically do some sort of like 30-minute treadmill workout, whether that's like incline treadmill hiking or, like a 30-minute kind of hill program. Because I used to do a lot more running. I don't do as much of that. Like, it's just not, I got what I could get. And I knew kind of how I would prep for these races. And I'm just not interested in doing that anymore. So I am heavier now as a result of just of rating in some of the higher effort cardio. And now I know everything we just talked about. Hey, you talk about these health outcomes from resistance training, fast twitch phenotype, you shouldn't do these things. It's like, yeah, and there are clearly health benefits. And we have enough data because the cardio stuff was the first data that this is net positive. It's just, where is the friction point with people? I flip it on its head where when people get stronger, they're going to organically do more of this stuff, especially in an active culture like Austin, Texas. It's not the thing to start with. So it is clear that people who have better cardiovascular fitness have better health outcomes. I like the effort of sustaining output. I'm doing it differently and for shorter periods of time that doesn't cannibalize my strength training or force me to be unduly sore. If you're training for like a trail half marathon or a trail 25K or something like that, like you go on your long run and then you're just shit the rest of the day, and I don't want it to, I want to get stronger. I want to add more lean tissue. Like I'm going to go on a first dieting phase for the first time in forever coming into,
are you increasing calories? Like, how's that going to work?
Just maintenance. Actually, here's the best part. Some of the stuff in the past, 10 years, Eric Helms has done a lot of studies on this. Maintenance or 5% over maintenance or 15% over maintenance does not change the rate of lean tissue gain.
Push over the rope.
But being at the top of the maintenance range is helpful, but not like, but even so it kept on getting this hedge, like, oh, now we can measure this stuff very accurately, right? And it just kept on getting to a smaller and smaller surplus until now it's just like the surplus is a rounding error. You want to be at the top of the range, but if you go over it a little bit, fine. It's just muscle growth is a slow process. So yeah, pushing with a rope, but we now have targets here. When we look at, we know the protein range, 1.6 to 2.2, that remains the same. As Lyle McDonald would point out, if we myopically focus on muscle protein synthesis, we lose track of the fact that there are other systems that upregulate their protein use that you cannot see as a function of muscle protein synthesis. Like dietary protein is not there exclusively for muscle tissue. Tendons, bones, organ mass, metabolic processes. As you strength train, the demand for protein from all these systems improves and increases. So if you're myopically focusing on a measure of muscle protein synthesis, then yeah, you're going to see it top out at lower numbers than Lyle may recommend. But if we look at other things like muscle protein breakdown rate, when you eat more protein above these ranges, not infinitely, it doesn't go to infinity, but you can reduce the rate of muscle protein breakdown or protein breakdown by like 20%. That's not a small number, right? And in some of these studies, the delta in lean tissue or the delta in synthesized proteins in the body is attributed not to increasing muscle protein synthesis, but to the reduction in muscle protein breakdown.
Oh, okay.
Right. So myopically just look at the plus side of the ledger, you miss some really good stuff.
So you do think there is benefit in increasing protein intake beyond 2.2?
Look, we come full circle. Bodybuilding logic, 0.7 to 0.1 grams per pound of body weight. You should be scaling protein to lean body mass first and foremost. But if you're reasonably lean, that's a good proxy.
Yeah.
Second, then we look at the bodybuilders, and it's about 3 grams per kilo of carbohydrate. There's lots of studies on this. Of course, you can gain lean mass at lower amounts of carbohydrate. Absolutely. But they tend to do better with more carbohydrate, not infinite carbohydrate. So for someone my size, I'm maybe 81, maybe 82 kilos right now. So then you just do the math. You're like, okay, that's what, 246 grams of carbs as a floor. And then fat becomes the fill to the calorie number you're targeting. So I'm going to do that. Like it's just not a big deal. And I can eat lots of wide variety of food. I don't have to micromanage fat because that still ends up being like 100 something grams of fat per day. Definitely not ketogenic, given all the carbohydrates, but not low fat by any stretch of the imagination. And then coming the summer, I'll do a cut phase where I add the weight. This will be a whole other thing about what we end up doing with, in the next time we talk, but the way in which weight vest added weight to offset weight loss, or even just added weight as a stimulus to bones to make you think that you're heavier in the way that modifies appetite. It's fascinating research. There's some clinical studies on just making people wear a weight vest 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 11% of their body weight. And you don't give them any dietary advice, and they will spontaneously reduce their caloric intake it'll spontaneously lose like 3 kilos of weight in that time.
Well, because they're consuming less.
There's a stimulus to consume less calories, even though they're heavier, right? There's a slightly increased caloric expenditure. Part of it is, but it's a signaling. I first saw this in a bodybuilder. Like
this is you are too heavy. You need to eat less signal. Is that what we're saying?
So you're suddenly happy. We don't know why. Like the bones have they call it the Gravitostat. You could look it up, the Gravitostat Theory. I first saw it when it was, I forget the name. Weightology is his blog. And he is
James Krieger.
Krieger, this bodybuilder just reduces calories 500. He's dieting to win his pro card. He reduces calories 500 calories per day to optimize the rate of loss, which is about 0.7% per week of body weight, which is associated with improved lean mass retention. And he would then, as he was losing weight, he would just add weight in the form of the vest to keep his total body weight at what he started at. Right. So if he lost, once he had 10-pound weight vest on, 15-pound weight vest on. And he said he didn't suffer any of the like sexual side effects or the fatigue or the hunger. And he won his pro card. Got shredded at the end. He had 2 weeks right before where he cut the calories even more. But that was sharpening. That was it. It was just walking around wearing 45 extra pounds of weight vest. He looked like the roving gangs of middle-aged women who think an 80-pound weight vest is going to solve their osteoporosis. Here where I live, there's all these influencers that got these women walking around with just not a lot of weight. And if we're honest, these women already are wearing a weight vest because your average American in middle age is over fat.
And the science says there's no benefit to bone density, right? Wearing weight vests. That's what last thing I read. Yeah.
No, very, very I really appreciate that in this space. There are these female influencers who are they're pointing out that a lot of this stuff around peri-menopause or around cycle syncing for workouts or things of that nature is basically like pathologizing normal life cycles for women. It is not pathologizing it. Any athlete, regardless, I don't know most clients like hormonal background when they walk in. We're always having a conversation. How do you look? How do you feel? Or how are you feeling today? Do we need to adjust for something? Do I need to make these first few exercises PT? And then depending on how you feel, we could push harder at the end of the workout. Like whatever the reason for that, those are the type of adjustments you should be making with a client, man or woman or old. You don't need to then try to like granularize and be clever. This is coming back to, you're coming back to that space of life. I don't have to think about what I'm doing. I'm not trying to be clever. I'm not trying to win an argument on the internet with my workouts. I'm looking at success from people I trust, and it fits what the science would suggest is not optimal. I don't like that word. Effective and works within my time frame, and I enjoy and doesn't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Optimal for what and for when and for like those are moving targets. Trying to optimize everything is a fool's errand. The same way trying to predict the next 12 weeks is a fool's errand, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
appreciate that. Yeah.
I think that's probably a good part to end on here.
Yeah, thank you. And I might be jumping on the Mike Petrella workout bandwagon very soon and asking you for more advice or asking Mike. Skyler, thanks so much for making the time. Guys, go and check out Skyler's business, smartstrengthaustin.com, where you can learn about his personal training business. This is Lawrence with highintensity.business.com. Thank you so much for listening.